chocolate isn't the answer, could you please repeat the question? Hello, this is Pat Coakley, and it's my monthly podcast called Pod Snacks Art of the Diet, and it's all about the fun of maintaining a significant weight loss. Now, we all know it's not all fun, but I try to make it fun because I've been doing it for 10 years. And I have the attention span of a mayfly, so I can never do things quite the same way. So I hope you join me. All of the past episodes are available on www.artofthediet.com. Hello, it's February 2020. And since I live in New England, I like to think about gardens around this time of year. Some of the catalogs come in and flowers and seeds and stuff. But I thought last month I'd focus on Monet's garden in France. That I've never seen it myself, but I know from photos that it is rather a spectacular place. And he lived there starting at the age of 43, and he never left. I guess he had a couple of homes there. He started out in one and then ended up in what is referred to as the Pink House. And I'm going to leave some links for the gardens that you can see on YouTube and listen to people talk about it if you want. But I wanted to focus in on what Monet ate every day, because he not only had this spectacular flower garden, but he had 2.5 acres a bit down the street from where he actually lived, vegetable garden, 2.5 acres. That's a lot of veggies. And he also had a kitchen garden where he had herbs and things that the cook could go right outside and pick whenever she wanted. So I was intrigued as to if one had that amount of fresh produce, what would you eat? And whether he was interested in food. As you know, some people are not. None of them are listening to this podcast, I feel sure, but you all know people that can get involved in their work and they simply forget to eat. Really, if it happens once or twice in my life, I may be exaggerating. So anyway, I delved into Claude Monet and quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to focus on Claude's fitness and exercise program because I believe that this was not at all a priority for him, and eating was. And he ate well, and he was not concerned about his diet. I don't see from a weight perspective, he looked like a large man in photos, and he made declarative statements about food as always being good to him, and I believe him. I totally do. And so I looked at some of his recipes, and I'm going to share some links to those recipes as well. And there are some that if you didn't like a certain vegetable like asparagus, you would see the photo of this, and it was photographed on his plates that he used for asparagus. You would simply want to get the asparagus and the plate to go along with it. And you could cut down on the butter maybe, or the creme fraiche or whatever. But the visuals are what struck me of Claude Monet's recipes. The color of his food almost reflects the staggering range of color and contrast of color in his garden. So I got thinking less about how to eat healthy from Monet's garden through his recipes. I would have to adapt many of them, but many of the recipes could easily be adapted. He loved vegetables, so it wasn't like someone who avoided it, and he celebrated it, wanted it with his main meal. His main meal was in the early afternoon, where he would invite guests like Cézanne, who liked Monet's cod fish recipe, just so you know. Both Cézanne and Monet, I guess, were partial to seafood, having had some childhood roots in, I think, Le Havre from Monet. And once you start looking through the books of his recipes and what his table looked like, what his dining room looked like, what his kitchen looked like, something takes over you, at least it did for me, that has nothing to do with calories and has nothing to do with eating a balanced diet. But what it does have to do is we should eat our meals, and meals that are beautiful, that we've taken some time and thought to wonder what the colors are going to be together for our meals. And I just remember when I first started losing weight 10 years ago, the thought of me having to match up colors was just going to be beyond me. I was challenged enough with getting the portions right and the food groups right and all of that. So I understand if you're thinking, oh, please, come on. I can't be doing a color chart with my meals. But I suspect if you are many years into maintaining your weight, that this sounds a bit appealing, because I know myself that if I start eating the same thing over and over, even if it started out looking rather beautiful with colors and contrasts and textures, if I'm eating the same thing 2 and 3 days in a row, it loses those positive qualities. So the resolve I have from doing my deep dive into Monet research is that I really am going to, for the month of February, focus in on the colors in Monet's recipes and see if I can each day have at least a side dish that reflects that aesthetic. And I think that's the wonderful thing about the maintaining your weight category, as opposed to when I was first losing the weight. It is really all hands on deck in the first phase when you're losing weight. You simply have to be strict about certain things, or else your rationales and negotiations with, well, I won't weigh in today, I'll weigh in tomorrow, or I'll just have some of this ice cream here today and maybe I'll have a little bit the next day, but then I'm not going to have any more. You know, all of those little negotiations we make with ourselves that end up weakening the progress toward our goal. But once you're maintained for a while, you sort of know that there are levels of alarm in when you look at the scale. And if you're up 2 pounds, you're not freaked out. You know what you have to do. You know you've done it before. You know you'll do it again. But there are times when even that gets somewhat threadbare in terms of infusing energy into it. And I've noted that certain things can do that energy transition faster than me doing any self-talk about, come on now, you know what to do, stop doing this, stop buying that. And that one thing is to devote attention to one particular dish and have it be different from what you're usually eating. It could be a vegetable that you eat, but you're going to prepare it in a different way. And you're going to go out of your way to find a different way. It's not going to be something you've done 6 months ago and you're going to try again. No, this is like going out there and looking for something that A, looks good, B, appeals to you as a food and as a combination in the recipe, and maybe has an ingredient in it that you've not yet bought for your meals. And so that is what I am coming away with. And along with that, I am just really looking at the colors on my wall and thinking redecorating might be in store. This book about Monet's gardens and recipes revealed the interior of his house. The exterior is not that awe-inspiring. But when you go inside in these rooms, he had a canary yellow dining room that had some blue accents and flowers always. As he said, and he was getting on to be an elderly man at this point, he said, flowers, I have to have flowers always. And he did. And I know that the other part of what I've come away with from him is how he planned his day and how he planned his garden and how it all was related to his own aesthetic and his own work. And I thought we're all trying to balance our meals with what we do and fit them in. And it's very interesting that he planned his day. As far as I can tell, he would get up very early. And as any artist knows, the early light as you are going around a garden would show it off in ways that looking at a garden midday would not. So he would go out and sketch and look and walk around, starting right when he got up at 5. And then he'd come back around 7 a.m. and have a full-on breakfast. And I'll leave some of the examples of his breakfast. And let me say that portion control was certainly not on his mind. Limiting to 2 tablespoons of oil or a pat of butter probably was not in the mix either. But he had fruit, he had eggs, he had perhaps vegetables, but he always had cheese, and there was always bread, and he had a hearty breakfast, let's say that. And then he would work up until around 12:30. And 12:30 was a time of day where he did not ever want to go out painting because the light was simply not right. So he planned his basic meal and his entertaining meal. These were the meals where he would entertain guests. It would not be the 5 o'clock dinner that he would have with his family. It would be the afternoon, starting at 12:30. And he had a cook, and she was responsible for making the meals, but often he'd be consulted about what particular dish or how it was to be prepared for a particular guest. As I said, if Cezanne came, they had cod, and they prepared it in a certain way that they knew Cezanne enjoyed it. From appearances, Monet was a very good host and tried his second wife. The first one died in childbirth, I think. His second wife would cater to his guests, but Monet also wanted to gear the meals around the likes and preferences of his guests, as well as himself. I don't think this was a man that was selfless, if I can read between the tea leaves. And he was exacting. I don't think that he was someone that displayed distemper often with guests or whatever, but he wanted to run his house in a certain way. He wanted his meals prepared in a certain way. He had one particular odd thing with his salad dressing, that the cook would always have to make a separate bowl of salad dressing for him, because his salad dressing, let's say if you put a quarter of a teaspoon of ground pepper into your vinaigrette, he would have like 4 tablespoons of pepper. He had a real desire for excessive amounts of pepper that simply other people couldn't tolerate. So he would be offered his salad dressing, and then every other person would get the regular amount of pepper in their salad dressing. But at any rate, he planned his day essentially around light and when he could use the light for his work. And so breakfast was at 7 when he got back from his 2 hours in the early morning light, and the main meal was at 12:30. When he never wanted to be in the gardens or out doing his plein air sketches or whatever. And then at 5 o'clock, that was a family meal. And I think his second wife had several children from previous marriage. So at one time, there were children at the table, and it would be a daily occurrence. There wouldn't be they wouldn't be skipping a family meal. It was part of the routine. And with that meal, again, what was served was colorful, served on dishes that, honestly, they're the kind of dishes that I look at and I go, my life would have been totally different if I ate off of these dishes. You know how you think something is simply going to ground you in a way that you've desperately needed to be grounded, but didn't know it until you saw this Limoges dish that he created. He apparently designed it in Limoges factory in France, created it. So I'm going to suggest to you that you look through, if not this book, which I'll leave a link to on www.artofthediet.com. But look through dining room books, kitchen books. See the colors, the table settings. See in particular, what I'm lusting for, literally, are some of the dishes that are specifically for vegetables, like the asparagus dish. It is just gorgeous when you have an asparagus dish and are serving asparagus and a little sauce. You simply feel like you've done something right in life. Does that sound silly? I suppose it does, but it is the sort of thing that keeps me interested in trying to eat healthy, but not be bored to death, and not to look to food as entertainment in any way, but as something that is nutritious and also beautiful to the senses. So I'm wondering if any of my listeners out there have run across resources for buying specific sorts of dishes for vegetables, pottery, sculptures. I don't know. I'm really new to this. I've never purchased them. So I'm going to start researching, and I'm just wondering, maybe you all are far more advanced in this area and would know of a store for me to check out, or somebody who makes them, some artist who does it. I'm just thinking that to celebrate 2020 and my 75th birthday, that I'm going to get some pretty plates. And I'm going to put beautiful things on them. And I'm going to do it one at a time. I'm not going to stress myself out with the whole damn meal. But I'm just going to make one particular dish from Monet's kitchen and serve it on a beautiful plate. And, maybe I'm going to mess around and get some of the photographs I have actually done of flowers. This book could have used, frankly. And I make placemats out of some of my photographs. So I'm thinking I'm going to invest a little creative time in creating a place setting or two that's going to raise my dining game and do less eating on my lap or in bed as I'm reading, and just do it more, sitting up proper at the table with a beautiful table setting and some beautiful looking food. I'm telling you, he has a vegetable casserole thing that has oranges and pinks and white, and then the green of the herbs, and a milk sort of based sauce. Really, it just looks delicious. And modified if you need to do it so it's less intense with cheese or butter or cream sauce. But just the colors of the vegetables themselves and how they were cut. I think that's the other thing that's critical to some of this aesthetic. It's how you cut your vegetables. So it's very interesting. I thought I was going to be focused in more on, the different recipes that he had, and to see how to do a complete meal like he had. But I come away from this with, I guess, a Monet sense of color. His color sense in his house was fabulous. And I'm going to see if I can extend that out to my house in some at least place setting way. And in terms of making one dish a day in the upcoming month that is new or a new combination of things, I'm going to pay attention to how I'm cutting the vegetables to see if I can make them look more aesthetically pleasing, and create substitutes maybe for heavy cream sauces and all that sort of stuff. So I'm still going to stay on the healthy side. But I think it would help all of us if we could just take one dish and make it a new one and make it done so it's beautiful, and to have sort of a separate dish for it. I am nuts. Okay. I am nuts. But I'm embracing it. And I hope that this inspires you maybe to look around at your place settings and at your food preparation and wonder if there isn't some small thing that you could buy that might just make this journey a little more fun, filled with a little joy and a more color, as well as healthy, and keep us interested. Because let's face it, keeping interested in keeping this going is the key. And that's why a lot of people give up on it. They simply lose interest with the same old, same old. And those of us who have been here sharing this podcast together for 5 years, we know we are constantly beginning again and again and again. And so that's it for February 2020. I'll report back in March about my goal of creating something new every day that's aesthetically pleasing as well as healthy, and my investigation into specific plates for vegetables or fruit. And if you have any suggestions of where I might look, email me at pbc@patcoakley, patcoakley.com. And I also wanted to prepare you for a email I'm going to send out to the people who are on this list of Art of the Diet, that I have started a newsletter on my patcoakley.com site. It's called Notes from My Bunker, because you do know that I have been living in a bunker since November 2016. And so I've started writing again, and writing, maybe 3 times a week on the blog, but also making a weekly newsletter of recommendations about everything that I'm focused in on, that I think is fun or I think is interesting. Sometimes that has to do with food, sometimes that has to do with movies or TV or a lot of book stuff, as well as just simple short essays about life and things. I know some of you have written me wanting to know if I would be more active in a Facebook group or whatnot. And I just find that for me, reinvigorating the patcoakley.com site is the way to go. And so I'm going to send out to you one of the newsletters through this list. And if you're interested in getting more of them, you can go to patcoakley.com and sign up for it, but I'm not going to force it on you. But I thought I would send you one of them, and then you can make up your mind. So I just wanted to alert you to that. You've not signed up for anything. I'm not going to be sending this to you, every week like I will to the subscribers. But I thought enough of you have expressed interest in some of my activities outside of this podcast, and thought you might want to at least take a look at it. So that's it for this month. Hold on, people. 2020. Wow. Okay. As my father would say, as I am a radio operator, over and out.